The GOP's attraction to military power is becoming a strategic liability. The war in Iran makes clear that the United States' June 22, 2025 strike on Iran's nuclear facilities was not the end of a crisis.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Last night, on President Trump's orders, U.S. Central Command conducted a precision strike in the middle of the night against 3 nuclear facilities in Iran, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan, in order to destroy or severely degrade Iran's nuclear program. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success. The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program. But it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people.
But the start of a long-term confrontation. What began as an effort to degrade Iran's nuclear program has escalated into joint U.S.-Israel strikes that killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The rapid escalation and Israel's deep involvement highlights how closely Washington has aligned itself with Israel's security objectives since the Gaza war began on October 7, 2023, especially in countering Iran's regional influence and military capabilities. Establishing American authority abroad has long been a defining strategy within Republican politics. The United States possesses the most capable military in the world, and many GOP leaders view that strength as the cornerstone of global stability. When they hold power, there's often a strong desire to demonstrate that capability, both to reassure allies and to deter adversaries. But in moments of global volatility, that desire can risk prioritizing displays of force over broader strategic and political priorities at home. It can also unsettle the very allies Republicans seek to reassure, especially when signals of strength begin to look like signals of escalation. Yet the political landscape in the United States has shifted in ways that make this approach increasingly costly. After 2 decades of conflict in the Middle East, Americans, including many within the GOP's own base, are weary of military commitments that lack clear objectives. Public trust in institutions is already strained, and each new escalation, especially one without a clear diplomatic or strategic endgame, deepens that skepticism. In an era defined by economic anxiety and domestic instability, the instinct to project strength through military action no longer reassures voters. It risks reinforcing the sense that Washington is repeating the same patterns that eroded confidence in the first place. Republican leaders often argue that decisive military action is necessary to protect U.S. interests abroad. But the historical record since Vietnam tells a more complicated story.
Our third choice is to go to the heart of the trouble. And that means cleaning out major North Vietnamese and Viet Cong occupied territories. These sanctuaries which serve as bases for attacks on both Cambodia and American and South Vietnamese forces in South Vietnam. Some of these, incidentally, are as close to Saigon as Baltimore is to Washington. This one, for example, is called the Parrot's Beak. It's only 33 miles from Saigon. Now, faced with these 3 options, this is the decision I have made. In cooperation with the armed forces of South Vietnam, attacks are being launched this week to clean out major enemy sanctuaries on the Cambodian-Vietnam border. A major responsibility for the ground operations is being assumed by South Vietnamese forces. For example, the attacks in several areas, including the Parrot's Beak that I referred to a moment ago, are exclusively South Vietnamese ground operations under South Vietnamese command, with the United States providing air and logistical support. There is one area, however, immediately above Parrot's Beak, where I have concluded that a combined American and South Vietnamese operation is necessary. Tonight, American and South Vietnamese units will attack the headquarters for the entire communist military operation in South Vietnam. This key control center has been occupied by the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong for 5 years in blatant violation of Cambodia's neutrality. This is not an invasion of Cambodia. The areas in which these attacks will be launched are completely occupied and controlled by North Vietnamese forces. Our purpose is not to occupy the areas. Once enemy forces are driven out of these sanctuaries, and once their military supplies are destroyed, we will withdraw.
Thank you all. Please. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, Vice President Cheney, members of Congress, distinguished guests, fellow citizens. As we gather tonight, our nation is at war, our economy is in recession, and the civilized world faces unprecedented dangers. Yet the state of our union has never been stronger. We last met in an hour of shock and suffering. In 4 short months, our nation has comforted the victims, begun to rebuild New York and the Pentagon, rallied a great coalition, captured, arrested, and rid the world of thousands of terrorists, destroyed Afghanistan's terrorist training camps, saved the people from starvation, and freed a country from brutal oppression. The American flag flies again over our embassy in Kabul. Terrorists who once occupied Afghanistan now occupy cells at Guantanamo Bay. And terrorist leaders who urged followers to sacrifice their lives are running for their own. America and Afghanistan are now allies against terror. We'll be partners in rebuilding that country. And this evening, we welcomed the distinguished interim leader of a liberated Afghanistan, Chairman Hamid Karzai. My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign. More than 35 countries are giving crucial support, from the use of naval and air bases to help with intelligence and logistics to the deployment of combat units. Every nation in this coalition has chosen to bear the duty and share the honor of serving in our common defense. To all the men and women of the United States Armed Forces now in the Middle East, the peace of a troubled world and the hopes of an oppressed people now depend on you. That trust is well placed. The enemies you confront will come to know your skill and bravery. The people you liberate will witness the honorable and decent spirit of the American military. In this conflict, America faces an enemy who has no regard for conventions of war or rules of morality. Saddam Hussein has placed Iraqi troops and equipment in civilian areas, attempting to use innocent men, women, and children as shields for his own military, a final atrocity against his people. I want Americans and all the world to know that coalition forces will make every effort to spare innocent civilians from harm. A campaign on the harsh terrain of a nation as large as California could be longer and more difficult than some predict. And helping Iraqis achieve a united, stable, and free country will require our sustained commitment. We come to Iraq with respect for its citizens, for their great civilization, and for the religious faiths they practice. We have no ambition in Iraq except to remove a threat and restore control of that country to its own people. I know that the families of our military are praying that all those who serve will return safely and soon. Millions of Americans are praying with you for the safety of your loved ones and for the protection of the innocent. For your sacrifice, you have the gratitude and respect of the American people. And you can know that our forces will be coming home as soon as their work is done. Our nation enters this conflict reluctantly, yet our purpose is sure. The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder. We will meet that threat now with our Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines, so that we do not have to meet it later with armies of firefighters and police and doctors on the streets of our cities. Now that conflict has come, the only way to limit its duration is to apply decisive force. And I assure you, this will not be a campaign of half measures, and we will accept no outcome but victory. My fellow citizens, the dangers to our country and the world will be overcome. We will pass through this time of peril and carry on the work of peace. We will defend our freedom. We will bring freedom to others, and we will prevail. May God bless our country and all who defend her.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels and international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again, they can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore.
The fall of Saigon in 1975 cemented communist rule in Vietnam. Iraq established an Islamic, democratic, federal parliamentary republic in 2005, and the United States withdrew its forces in 2011. The Taliban regained control of Afghanistan immediately after the U.S. withdrawal in August 2021. Across these conflicts, the common thread is that the United States ultimately left.
The briefing was delayed until the evacuation was completed, and the last helicopters are now in the air. I'd like to read a statement by the President. During the past week, the President had ordered the reduction of American personnel in the United States mission in Saigon to levels that could be quickly evacuated during an emergency, while enabling that mission to continue to fulfill its duties. During the day on Monday, Washington time, the airport in Saigon came under persistent rocket as well as artillery fire and was effectively closed. The military situation in the area deteriorated rapidly. The President therefore ordered the evacuation of all American personnel remaining in South Vietnam. The evacuation has now been completed. The President commends the personnel of the armed forces who accomplished it, as well as Ambassador Graham Martin and the staff of his mission, who served so well under difficult conditions. This action closes a chapter in the American experience. The President asks all Americans to close ranks, to avoid recriminations about the past, to look ahead to the many goals we share, and to work together on the great tasks that remain to be accomplished. Copies of this statement will be available as you leave the briefing.
Fort Bragg, we're here to mark a historic moment in the life of our country and our military. For nearly 9 years, our nation has been at war in Iraq. And you, the incredible men and women of Fort Bragg, have been there every step of the way, serving with honor, sacrificing greatly, from the first waves of the invasion to some of the last troops to come home. So as your Commander-in-Chief, and on behalf of a grateful nation, I'm proud to finally say these two words, and I know your families agree. Welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home.
Last night in Kabul, the United States ended 20 years of war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. We completed one of the biggest airlifts in history, with more than 120,000 people evacuated to safety. That number is more than double what most experts thought were possible. No nation has ever done anything like it in all of history. Only the United States had the capacity and the will and ability to do it, and we did it today. The extraordinary success of this mission was due to the incredible skill, bravery, and selfless courage of the United States military and our diplomats and intelligence professionals. For weeks, they risked their lives to get American citizens, Afghans who helped us, citizens of our allies and partners and others on board planes and out of the country. And they did it facing a crush of enormous crowds seeking to leave the country. And they did it knowing ISIS-K terrorists, sworn enemies of the Taliban, were lurking in the midst of those crowds. And still, the women and men of the United States military, our diplomatic corps, and intelligence professionals did their job and did it well, risking their lives, not for professional gains, but to serve others.
And the political outcomes in those countries did not align with the goals that justified intervention in the first place. That context makes recent rhetoric especially troubling when President Trump said, "The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost. It often happens in war, but we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future."
This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran.
He was invoking a familiar justification for escalation. As a veteran of the Iraq War, I have seen firsthand the human cost of these decisions. After 5 decades of evidence, it is difficult to argue that risking American lives in conflicts with no clear endgame has produced greater security for the United States. War leaves generational scars. People on all sides remember how they and their families were affected, and those memories shape political behavior long after the fighting stops. Some conclude that war should be avoided because its consequences ripple too far. Others seek revenge. Still others distance themselves from leaders who treat conflict as a routine instrument of policy. The current military escalation in Iran is creating conditions in which instability will persist for decades. The Middle East has been unpredictable for generations, and each new conflict adds another layer of grievance and distrust. From Vietnam to Iraq to Afghanistan and now to Iran, the pattern is consistent. Large-scale U.S. military interventions rarely produce the long-term stability they are intended to create. Across the world, populations often hold values, aspirations, and grievances that differ sharply from those of the governance ruling them. Recognizing this distinction is essential for any long-term U.S. strategy. Also recognizing that the solution the United States presents may not be the one the people of a foreign nation desire, despite its merit. Durable stability comes from understanding the political, ethnic, and generational diversity inside a society, as well as understanding the sensitivity around how they themselves perceive their government. Americans and our political leaders would do well to acknowledge this reality as the United States considers how to engage with regimes that present conflict or competition. A clearer grasp of these dynamics would not guarantee success, but it would give U.S. policymakers a far better foundation for avoiding the costly misjudgments that have defined so many past interventions, as well as this current intervention in Iran. A more sustainable Republican foreign policy posture would pair deterrence with disciplined diplomacy rather than military escalation without clear diplomatic aims. We need more conversations like this. Conversations that step back from the noise and look at how we got here. Understanding the long arc of American decision-making is essential if we want to build something more stable and more disciplined. That's the purpose of the All Republic Project. Creating a space where we can examine the patterns beneath our politics and think seriously about what a healthier republic would require. If you're new to this work, my first video, Build the Republic We Want, lays out the foundation. Each essay builds on that same idea. We can't shape the future unless we're honest about the incentives and reflexes that shape the past. I'll be publishing more essays, both video and written, across my media platforms. If this kind of analysis resonates with you, the links are in the description below.